Let's make pot pie. In my last video, I canned duck and it smelled so good that I knew I wanted to use some of it right away. And I am using 2 pints of duck because I am going to split this into 2 pies. So I have about a 1/4 cup of butter in my skillet and I am going to saute my vegetables. I keep diced carrots, onion, and celery in my freezer, so I added the equivalent of about 2 large carrots and 3 or 4 stalks of celery, and I'm just going to cook that down. And because it was frozen, it is going to release a lot of water, but that will cook out. And then I added the onion, and I will continue to cook this until the onion is translucent. I also had a handful of fresh butter beans from my greenhouse, so I went ahead and threw that in too. Once the vegetables were soft, I added the duck to the skillet. This duck is completely cooked. It has been pressure cooked, and so it is very tender. I'm just using the spoon to shred it so that I can mix it evenly throughout the vegetables. For seasoning, all I added was a little salt, pepper, and thyme. And then I added about a 1/3 cup of self-rising flour. I don't know why, I always use self-rising flour for gravy and sauces. It's what my mom did, so it's what I do. And then I incorporated the flour really well and cooked it for about 2 minutes before I added the duck broth. I used water in the broth. You could use milk or heavy cream. The duck is going to make this really rich, so I didn't want to add cream to this dish. If I was using chicken, I would have. For pot pie, you want to start out with a little more liquid than you want at the end because that liquid is going to continue to evaporate once you put it in the oven. I've turned the heat off and I added a bag of frozen peas and carrots. I'm going to split this into 2 pies and send one to my mom's house. I had a pie crust left over from Thanksgiving that needed to be used, so my mom is going to get the actual pie. The other half of this I'm just going to cook in the skillet and not use a bottom pie crust. And I didn't have frozen pie crust in the freezer and I didn't feel like making pie crust. This is just a sheet of pastry puff that I had in the freezer, and I'm brushing the top with a little egg wash. And these are going to go in the oven at 425. I'm terrible about planning things ahead, so I had not set this pastry puff out to thaw early enough, so it's still kind of frozen. But the one in the skillet is just for me and my family, so I wasn't really worried about it being pretty. This is my mom's pie. Look how pretty. Even with the pastry puff, it only had to stay in the oven for about 15 minutes, and it was completely done and hot and bubbly. And then the pie in the skillet, look how pretty that turned out, even with the pastry puff being frozen when I put it in the oven. This pot pie was delicious. This will probably be what I use the rest of my canned duck for, or something similar. If you have a recipe that would be good using canned duck, let me know.